So today is our first day in Unit 5. Unit 5 is our last unit for the semester. Unit 5 covers the Civil War and Reconstruction, so we'll be looking at the causes that led up to the Civil War, and then what happens after the Civil War with Reconstruction. So hopefully by now you've already read this information on the Second Great Awakening and you've filled out the questions on the Google form to answer. And what this video is going to do is to give you an overview of the project that you're going to be working on. Okay, so you learned about the Second Great Awakening through that reading, hopefully, and also during this time period is a movement that's happening in the United States called the Transcendental Movement, and the people who follow it are Transcendentalists. And this was a philosophical movement. Ralph Waldo Emerson and Henry David Thoreau were some of the main leaders. They were big transcendentalists. You may have heard of these men. Maybe you've read some of their poems or their books in your English classes. And transcendentalists were really afraid that all of the things that occurred with the market revolution as people were moving into factories and things weren't being made by hand anymore, they were really afraid that people were losing their individualism and that they were just becoming kind of cogs in a machine. And so what the transcendentalists believe, they're really philosophical, they're very reflective, they were really big into nature and the environment, kind of called them like the first hippies. They thought that you needed self-improvement, so you should improve yourself and then you should improve society around you. So the goal was to always be making yourself better, and then as you became better, you were going to seek to make the world a better place as well. And that kind of tied into the Second Great Awakening also. So transcendentalism was not a religious movement. The Second Great Awakening was a religious movement that was started by Charles Finney, who was a preacher during this time period. The Second Great Awakening helped open Christianity to everyone. We saw more converts to Christianity. We'll also see more religious denominations that form, as well as some denominations like the Mormon Church and Jehovah's Witnesses, as well as an increase in members to Baptist and Methodist churches as well. And the Second Great Awakening has kind of the same idea as the Transcendentalists. They want to focus on self-improvement through religious means, and then as people became better and improved themselves, they would then improve society around them. And Transcendentalists and members of the Second Great Awakening saw some of the same problems in society. And so we're looking at a time period known as the antebellum period. And antebellum here means before war. So we're talking about the period before the Civil War. So we're looking kind of between 1815 and 1860. And what happens is the Second Great Awakening and the Transcendental Movement create a lot of different reform movements within the United States. The biggest problem that people saw was slavery. So the biggest movement that formed is the abolitionist movement, which sought to abolish or end slavery. And this will become really the focal point. It'll be a huge cause of the Civil War. And we'll kind of see all of these other movements take a back seat until after the Civil War because the issue of slavery becomes so dominant in the United States. There's also the temperance movement that sought to limit the consumption of alcohol. So people during this time period were drinking about 3 times as much as people drink today. And so there was a huge movement to limit alcohol consumption to try to improve society. There was also the women's rights movement that formed during this time period as women were trying to get equality. And we'll even see women advocating for the right to vote, even though women won't get the right to vote until 1920. We also see a lot of educational reform. We'll see proponents, especially a man named Horace Mann, who advocated for universal public education and creating the public school system like we have today, as well as institutional reform, as people were trying to improve prisons and hospitals and mental asylums and the treatment of the mentally ill and things like that. Dorothea Dix was a huge leader of this movement. And so all of these were seeking to make society better. And so what we're going to do is you're going to be able to learn about some of these leading reformers through the project that you're going to work on. So you're going to choose a person and you will be writing an obituary for them. So an obituary is written about a person after their death to help commemorate their life. And your obituary is going to have a headline. It's going to be in the form of this obituary modeled on the last page. So you'll have your headline, and then you can kind of read through here to see how yours should be written. It should be typed Times New Roman size 12 font. You will include a works cited page. You can do your works cited in MLA or APA according to the rubric. And I noticed that we were struggling with citations, so I did put a citation guide on here. You can see how to format, and there's even an example, or you can use like the citation generator to help you format your sources. And then you want to focus on their biographical information. So their criticisms of society, meaning kind of which movement were they a part of? What were they trying to fix in this society? So what did they think was wrong? How were they trying to fix it? What methods did they use to fix the problem? So did they write books? Did they give speeches? Were they a preacher? So what were the things that they did to try to get their message across? What were their major accomplishments? And then you also want to include how they died, so their cause of death. And so there's a whole list that you can choose from. I won't go through and tell you about all of these people. Some of them I mentioned when I was going through the list earlier, but you can look on here. Some of these names you'll probably recognize because you probably have heard of them before, but we've got leaders of the women's rights movement. Harriet Tubman's on here. We've got some transcendentalists. Brigham Young and Joseph Smith were founders of the Mormon Church. Lyman Beecher was the leader of the temperance movement. And so there's a lot of different people on here, and there's enough for everybody to choose one. And so you're actually going to open the document and you can comment with the person that you want. Nobody can do the same person as someone else, to make sure that you choose a person that hasn't been taken. And then you can start working on your obituary. Again, here's the rubric, the same things that I went over just a second ago. You want your headline, you want to make sure your grammar and spelling is correct, have your works cited, and then it should be between 250 and 300 words. And again, it will be formatted like this example that's right here. So choose whoever that you're interested in. Some of these people led really interesting lives. And then you will write your obituary about them. So if you have questions about that, just let me know. This will be due on Sunday night, so continue to work on it through the week, and you'll also have some other assignments we'll be working on this week as well.